Hi, Namaskaram. Today I'll be talking about one more valuation metric, namely Sortino's number. Sortino's number is used um, to uh, find out the possibility of a fund generating returns below a risk-free rate. As an investor, if I'm given two options between to choose, that is, say for instance, mutual funds and FD. Um, FD gives me, banks almost, 99, 95, most of the times deliver what they commit to the public, to the investor. I could take. It is fair on my part to assume that 5 to 6% is almost assured. Is guaranteed. Guaranteed by the banks. So as an investor, um, I my first concern uh, about investing in mutual funds is whether the fund can generate at least the FD rates. That is 5 to 6% bare minimum. So I don't know. As an investor, I don't want anything less than six. Is anything less than five. FD rates. So Sortino's number, it's a statistical tool that helps you find out whether the fund can deliver above the risk-free rate. So it is also no, for 5 minutes. Basically, so sorry, Uh, it is, first application of Sortino's number. It is used to find the tentative return of a fund um, above the risk-free value. Second thing, it is used as a tool, to compare um, two investments, or to compare between um, what is it, use as a tool to choose the best investment options. Um, Say for instance, you have three or four investment options. You can use Sortino's number to find out. To assess the risk, uh, and the returns that these investment options would deliver. Um, would deliver. So, the simple logic is, uh, you can choose the best investment option is one with the higher Sortino's number. Anything between one and two is considered very good. Anything about two is considered excellent. So this is about Sortino's number. To make your understanding. To make your understanding easier. I just want to go back to my earlier session where I was talking about standard deviation. Um uh, Standard deviation, downside risk ratio. I mean, see, one could say Sortino number is an improvised version of all these statistical tools. Let me give a recap. Let me recap those concepts. Um, Let me start with standard deviation. Standard deviation, as you know, it measures the gap in return between the actuals and the benchmark. So, for instance, I took the example of a cricket match where a player is averaging consistently at 50. There's an average of 50 runs per innings. Uh, let us say he has a standard. Standard deviation for that player is 10%. So, what does it say is he could deliver uh, between 45 and 55. That is 10% on 50. You deduct 5 on this side and you add 5 on this side. Let me. So standard deviation measures the volatility on both sides, on the positive and the negative. As an investor, I'm more worried about my returns. What is it? My returns below the lower limit. I'll be apping anything above. I mean, anything above 50. I mean, the batsman average is above 55. I'm quite happy to take it. Same way, but I'm more worried about about fund or or the batsman's average getting below the lower limit. So um, um, so standard deviation measures the volatility, good volatility and the bad volatility. Um, so you basically, a good fund as a low, I mean, a stable fund is expected to have a low standard deviation. Um, the same time, a fund with higher standard deviation means that it can, it can, um, uh, fund can generate, extreme values. That is, say for instance, 50% on 50. So batsman can score anywhere between 25 and 75. So there will be times when, when the fund value would do. I mean, fund value would come down. At the same time, there's a potential to generate high returns. So in any fund with higher standard deviation is considered. Um, considered risky. Is considered as a risky investment. So then I discussed about downside risk ratio. Downside risk ratio. Um, uh, is calculated. Um, Basically, measures. Um, is used for finding out uh, the probability or the chances of the fund uh, generating returns below a risk-free return. So risk-free return is the bare minimum that I would expect. I mean that as an investor would get from a another investment source. So he does not want to miss out on that basic return. So downside risk ratio um, is a risk ratio is a mathematical tool uh, that can give you insights on the fund's capability to generate returns, um, um, above risk free rate or or below that rate. So if as an investor, I'll be happy um, with the downside risk ratio, uh, with a lower downside risk ratio and higher, with a lower downside risk ratio. Say for instance, I'll just give you an example. Downside risk ratio is calculated by finding out the differences between the actual returns and the portfolio. Actual returns and the expected returns. Um, uh, and finding out the standard deviation of the negatives. Then um, the ratio is calculated by taking the standard deviation of the entire data set, that is, say 5 years returns, and the standard deviation of the negatives. So say for instance, standard deviation of a particular fund is around 10, and downside uh, risk is around is calculated again by taking out the difference. Negative difference. Say actually, this one, and the negative differences between values that would generate negative returns. Say for instance, a portfolio what is it, as a return of um, 6%, and benchmark index as a return of uh, 7%. So difference is -1. So you basically take out the negative values um, from the data set, then find out the standard deviation of those negatives. And downside risk ratio is calculated by finding the standard deviation of the entire data set by divided by the standard deviation of these negatives. So, for instance, uh, say standard deviation of the entire data set is 10. Downside ratio is downside risk is around for downside risk is around 4. We can say, one could say that the fund has 40% chance of generating returns below a particular risk-free return, and 60% would come from good volatility. That is higher than the expected return. So one could get an idea. At the end of the day, no one could predict the behavior of. Very difficult to my say. I'm not equipped to say whether the fund, whether one can go buy. Uh, go. One can start. One can invest based on this ratio. Um, Still, the funds can go. It can get entirely. It can go entirely wrong. So it depends when. Say, but it can give you an insight. Seeing, say, boss, there is a 60% chance of funds generating returns higher than the. Above a particular return. Expected return. So I can take the risk. It depends on the risk appetite and of the investor. So this, downside, then this ratio, Sortino's number is extension of the downside risk return. It can say, it talks about the possibility of the fund generating return below the um, sorry, sorry, I want to rephrase it. It can say that the fund, it can say the possibilities of the fund um, generating returns uh, by factoring in the downside risk ratio. In other words, one can say that what is the the chances of the fund generating returns below a particular risk-free rate. So as an investor, I'm worried. I'm not worried about no the higher limit. The positives. But the positive side of um, positive side of return that a fund could generate. I'm more worried about more concerned about 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 the safety of my investment. I mean, what will happen in a worst case scenario? Whether I can at least generate the basic minimum that I would get from a investment source, um, from an investment source. So Sortino's ratio gives an. What does it mean? Is applied to find out the best investment source. There is a mathematical formula um, uh, which gives you a value. A value of 0 and 1 is considered as a bad investment. Anything above 1 is considered as good. Anything above 2 is considered excellent. So it is used for comparing two investment options. The logic is one could choose the best investment with a Sortino, with a higher Sortino value. So all this, all these valuation parameters, are important. One cannot say that Sortino number is very high, but standard deviation is high. So I can reject the fund. See, it all gives you an insight, but there are some ideal values, guideline values for every valuation metric that could make your investment. Um, I mean, that could give, I mean, um, that could make your that could help you make a I mean a good investment choice. So this is about it. You can go through the web for Sortino's number. Nothing to confuse. See, the basic concept is standard deviation. How much variance? I mean, you should know. I mean, basically, the end objective of all analysis is to find out whether the fund can deliver the expected returns under the, given the amount of risk involved in investing. So all these concepts are derived based on this objective, and every evaluation metric has its own applications. So, but you can what you can, as I from a layman's perspective, you can uh, you can no you can you can, what to say, you can have a um, you can make an informed decision with these ideal values. With these ideal values. Thank you. Namaskaram. Nandri.